Driving through this part of the Norfolk countryside, you'd barely notice anything special, just open fields and country lanes. However, what if I was to tell you that over 900 years ago stood a thriving medieval settlement? Now lost to time, Guten once had a market, lords and labourers, but now it's lost. No ruins, no remnants, just a lonely sign in this field. The 18th century Norfolk antiquarian Reverend Francis Bloomfield described Guten as a considerable town and lordship at the time of the Domesday Book, and finds like this finger ring and Christian pendant from the 13th century remind us that people once lived here, going about their daily lives. So join me as we explore the town that time forgot. Our story begins, as many medieval ones do, in 1066 with the Norman conquest. Norfolk, like much of England, faced massive change after the Battle of Hastings. Hundreds of small villages, many once independent rural communities, were about to be reshaped forever. I'm here in the rural parish of Brandeston, now home to a little over 100 people. At the time of William the Conqueror, the real settlement actually wasn't here in Brandeston, but a few miles away in the settlement of Guton. Here's the Domesday entry for Gutha Catuna, or Guten to you and me, held by Tihel of Helion, a Breton knight rewarded for his service to the new King William. And here's Brandeston, or Brantistuna, administered directly by the Crown. Now, you don't need to be an expert to see the difference. Whilst Guten boasted at least 40 households, Brantistuna, or Brantstead, amounted to little more than a farm with 4. And it's not just Brandeston that seems insignificant compared to Guten. Nearby settlements like Corston and Reetham that now thrive with schools, churches and their own markets actually were considerably smaller at the time of the Domesday Book, with only 26 and 18 households respectively. So how does a settlement like Guten just disappear? As said, there's nothing left, no ruins, no remnants. Well, the archives can actually tell us quite a lot. By digging through deeds and registers, in particular those held by Magdalen College, Oxford, which later came to own the manor, we uncover a Guten dynasty, rectors, benefactors, knights and lords whose lives shaped this place. So, let's begin with our first family, the Peches, a small but influential part of Norfolk's rural nobility, whose control of even a small modest settlement like Guten gave them real economic power in the High Middle Ages. By the early 13th century, the Peche family had acquired the lordship of Guten, serving as loyal vassals to the powerful royal justiciar Hubert de Burgh, the Earl of Kent. The most notable among them was Sir Simon Peche, a devoted subject and knight of the realm. In 1234, Sir Simon Peche was recorded as holding 3/4 of a knight's fee in Guten. Now, this wasn't just a ceremonial title, it meant he owed military service to the crown and confirmed his status as a major local landholder. By the 1280s, they'd even managed to secure a weekly market from a royal licence and an annual fair honouring St John the Baptist. With all of this power, the Peche family had certainly managed to exert their control and influence over Guten. But perhaps their most valuable holding was a 34-acre meadow, not just land, but life. These low-lying fields produced the hay that would keep livestock alive during the winter. And in a world where these animals meant survival, it was more than just practical, it meant power. So, the meadow, the market, even the hunting rights, these weren't just features of a small manor, they were the lifeblood of Guten's economy, a web of land, law and lineage that once built a thriving settlement and would, in time, be all that remained of it. But, like so many medieval estates, fortunes could shift quickly. And by the late 13th century, the Peche's grip on Guten was loosening. With the marriage of Simon's granddaughter, a new name was rising in its place, the Gyneys. And to have travelled here, their patriarch Sir Roger would have just had to ride only a few miles from his nearby ancestral seat in the small settlement of Havringland. Supposedly of French descent, the Gyney family were composed of knights and local lords. Sir Roger Gyney, who married Marjorie Peche, had already secured hereditary rights to the land of Guten by 1281, just a year before he was summoned to fight in the Welsh campaign of King Edward I. One thing that stands out about the Gyney family is their notable piety. Now, of course, it was not uncommon for local medieval lords to give away vast amounts of money and wealth to set up things like churches and religious institutions. But the fact there's so much money being spent here speaks to something much more important: a tradition of noble, encouraged piety, with Guten and surrounding settlements at the heart of a vibrant religious landscape. And to truly understand this landscape, we have to go back over a century, to the time of Sir Roger's great-grandfather, William Gyney. William Gyney was a powerful local figure, ruling the settlement and lands around Havringland at the end of the 12th century. Yet perhaps his most enduring legacy was the founding of Mountjoy Priory, a religious house dedicated to St. Lawrence, established during the reign of Richard I. Originally a dependent Benedictine cell of the nearby much larger Windham Abbey, William Gyney struck an agreement in 1210, wherein which the Benedictine monks would be replaced by Augustinian canons. Now, this was a massive statement. Unlike other orders, Augustinians were active in their relations with the local community. This meant running local parish churches, preaching sermons, training clergy, visiting the sick, and aiding the poor. What's perhaps most interesting, as we know, is that these religious houses were often heavily endowed by local lords, and Mountjoy was no exception. In 1294, Sir Roger, now Lord of Guten, invested a large sum of money into the priory, and he followed this up in 1306 by granting legal immunity to the canons against any lawsuit brought by serfs. But how does this actually link to Guten? If these Augustinian canons were being financed by the Lord of Guten, you would have likely expected residents to have regularly made the trek to this site, particularly following the 1364 papal indulgence, in which Pope Urban V himself encouraged the faithful to make pilgrimages to Mountjoy on 12 feast days across the year. So, Mountjoy Priory was more than just a religious house. Shaped by Augustinian canons and the Gyney family, its presence actually teaches us a lot about the settlement of Guten and gives valuable details into everyday life here, of belief, charity and belonging. But this didn't last. Unlike the peaceful marriage that ended the Peche tenure, the Gyney family's 150 years stewardship of Guten came to a close through a bitter inheritance dispute, sparked by the ambitions of a rising nobleman who would one day inspire a Shakespearean anti-hero. It started with the death of Sir Thomas Gyney in 1401. His will divided the lands between his children, with his son, also named Thomas, set to inherit the main estate. But when this younger Thomas died without a male heir, his sister Marjorie stood to inherit the estate, and it is here our story takes an unexpected turn. Enter Sir John Fastolf, notable military commander during the 100 Years' War and the inspiration behind the Shakespearean anti-hero Falstaff. After years of fighting for his country, Fastolf returned to England and somehow had managed to secure himself rights to many manors and lands across England. One of these was Guten. However, Marjorie and her sisters disputed this, and in order to prevent uproar, an agreement was made. Fastolf agreed to pay 1,000 marks, about £500,000 today, to the Mayor of Norwich as a form of security. If Fastolf held uncontested possession of the manor until Trinity term, he would keep it, and the money would stay with Marjorie and her heirs. But if he lost control before then, the money would be returned to him. By the summer of that same year, Fastolf's possession was confirmed. Marjorie collected her 1,000 marks and moved to Norwich, where she lived out her days. With Marjorie's departure, the long-standing Peche-Gyney lineage at Guten finally came to an end. And with the Fastolf estate and their loyal advisers, the Pastons, at the helm, you would have expected things to have settled down. But again, you'd be wrong. When Sir John Fastolf died in November 1459, his estate descended into chaos. Though the manor of Guten was initially claimed by a man called William Yelverton, and had then fell into the hands of the notable Paston family, by 1473 even William Paston had had to give up his right to this manor. He gave it up to three men, Sir Thomas Urswick, Sir John Say, and most notable, the Bishop of Winchester, William Waynflete. The reason the land fell to Waynflete was because it was part of a patronage initiative supporting education. Following his sole acquisition, Waynflete went on to found Magdalen College, Oxford, to whom he officially conveyed the estate in 1483. The manor and surrounding lands became a vital source of income for the college and remained in their hands until 1979. This meant they were overseeing tenant farmers for almost 500 years. From this point onwards, Guten only remained in the name of the hall, with land being apportioned and sold off over centuries, with a continuous stream of tenant farmers working the land, a story that continues to this day. To live in Guten was to live close to the earth, to community, to faith, and to change. And although the settlement might be gone, its story still lingers here in the quiet fields of Norfolk.